Congressman Rohrabacher, thank you so much for speaking with Voice of America.
It's my pleasure.
Congressman, you are the chairman of the House Foreign Affairs Subcommittee on Europe, Eurasia, and emerging threats. Going into 2018, what are some of the issues you would like to focus on in the subcommittee?
Well, the most important issue we have in that part of the world is peace on the Korean Peninsula. I mean, we have seen the manifestation of psychotic behavior on the part of the leadership of North Korea. And you have some maniac who's, pardon me, but we think that he is I call him a communist piglet. The bottom line is that person is part of a family that has murdered the other family members. They've murdered so many people, and now he's banding about with a nuclear weapon. That's unacceptable, and we have got to make sure that that personality, which seems really strange to a lot of people, is not in some way get us into a nuclear war where either people in Korea or Japan or the United States are killed by the millions, or where the United States would then retaliate and kill hundreds of thousands or millions of people in North Korea. That would be a horrible thing. So our number one goal has to be to try to bring peace or find the formula for peace on the Korean Peninsula.
Mm-hmm. Right now, do you think the sanctions are working? And how do you think about what is the best way to solve this issue, and what is your red line for military options?
Mm-hmm. Well, we have got to, first of all, make it very clear that we are on the side of the people of North Korea. And also, we are in favor of frankly, a reunification of Korea, because the Korean people are in North Korea and the Korean people are in South Korea. And of course, you can't have reunification without some acceptance of the democratic process and respect for people's rights, which they have nothing in North Korea about. So we've got to make sure our goal and first of working is send that message to the people of North Korea. Our hands are stretched out in friendship to you, and to the people of South Korea. Let's work together and someone to put these people together. But I'm afraid that their leader is he's mentally unstable, I believe anyway, that he's mentally unstable. And so we've got to, I believe, begin a covert campaign in North Korea to get people to accept the idea of reunification in a more democratic process, where the people of North Korea would be able to choose their own leaders rather than having the Communist Party ram a leader down their throat.
Do you think that the Chinese and the Russians have done enough to help with this crisis, and also what kind of more of actions that you would like them to take, respectively?
I don't think either the Chinese or the Russians have done as much as I would like them to have done. But with Russia, the United States has been in a very belligerent attitude in dealing with Russia, and I wish we could expect them to just do us favors after we have been very belligerent to them. Maybe that's a good incentive for us now to relook at our relations and say, hey, maybe we should work together on things like North Korea. Hopefully that would ring true in the United States as well as in Moscow. But in terms of the Chinese, I don't think the Chinese have done anything. I think the Chinese are providing cover for this communist regime in the north, and I don't believe they can even have a missile system like they've got without Chinese help. The Chinese should understand, and the North Koreans should understand, that if indeed this guy keeps shooting rockets and missiles over Japan, for example, the Japanese are going to want the ability to retaliate if one of those missiles would hit Japan. So this may end up having Japan become a nuclear power again. Is that what China wants? Is that what North Korea wants? No, they shouldn't. That's would be really against their interests. So we should be basically telling them, be realistic here. And if you don't, we're going to end up with a nuclear Japan, which is what you don't want. And we should start by supporting any elements in North Korea that we can, with providing them information and providing them some kind of support systems that will help them get rid of their oppressor.
On U.S.-China relations, President Trump has been long criticized the lopsided trade imbalance with China,
Yes.
and he just imposed tariffs on solar panel imports, and many believe that he may take more actions on trade. Are you worried that a trade war is brewing with China, and how will that affect American workers?
We are already in a trade war with China, only we're not fighting and they are. The Chinese have been aggressively stealing our technology, not just coming forward and buying the rights from people who have patents on various technologies. No, they got to steal it, and they are controlling entry into their market by people in the United States, while we basically not only have given them entry into our market, but we are training their young people at our great universities, providing them billions, not hundreds of billions of dollars worth of wealth and in the form of information, which they suck up and take back to their country so that they can outcompete us with our own technology. And that doesn't even include the technology that they hack from our system. So no, they're already in a trade war with us. And I think President Trump, this just first initial steps, hopefully that will, again, maybe that will bring some people to their senses. Because like in North Korea, in China, the people there are not our enemies at all. It's not the people. We've got basically a fascistic system in both North Korea and in China, that you have your ruling elite that is also oligarchical in terms of finances and money and the control of wealth. So let's go support the regular people there, but let's not do what's happened is by having a more open system on our side and a control system on their side, their elite manages to channel wealth into their establishment. And their establishment is a fascist establishment, and we shouldn't just put up and see that's the result of we're trying to be nice, but we're actually being stupid.
You have been a long-time advocate for human rights in China. At this moment, how do you evaluate the human rights situation in China right now?
Well, I think that China has had no reform when it comes to human rights. It's had no reform when it comes to democratic elections or things such as that. It's had there's been no reform where you're actually permitting opposition parties. We need to reach out to those Chinese people who are being oppressed by the system. And you do have, whether it's not just the Falun Gong is a good example of that. Here's a group that is not in any way advocating a violent revolution or use of violence at all, but yet they're being thrown into jail, even to the point where we've traced situations where they are taking the organs. They're executing Falun Gong prisoners and taking their organs and selling them, maybe even to the people of the United States, which is a travesty. We need to make sure that we're on the side of the people there and not the side of the government.
You have been a long-time supporter of maintaining a strong relationship between the United States and Taiwan. What is your evaluation of the current status between Taiwan and the United States?
Well, Taiwan is a good example for the Chinese people to look at, and so you can see where real democracy can function within the Chinese culture. And there's some people who say, well, there's some cultures in the world where you can't have democracy. I don't know if I buy onto that, but especially that's not true with China. The fact is, on Taiwan, which has so small amount of territory. They actually have more land that is regular land that you can use in China per person than on the mainland than they do in Taiwan. And so with even less land that's usable land in Taiwan per person, they become a very prosperous country, and yet they're still free. And so I think the last thing we ought to do is try to walk away from Taiwan. That would do nothing but encourage warfare, and the people on the mainland have to understand that we will stand by the people of Taiwan, at least in showing them, selling them the weapons they need, etc. By the way, I don't think that China feels it will invade Taiwan now. Back 4 or 5 decades ago, I think that was a problem. I think that they understand that the Taiwan there is actually now a trading partner with them, which will make it much more beneficial as a trading partner than as playing a role directly in China.
Under the Trump administration, is there do you see any difference comparing to the previous administration regarding our relationship with Taiwan?
Yes, I think that during the last administration, we had a president who the overseas was not projecting strength and power and those elements that a president of the United States have available to him in his decision making, and also in how he makes demands and negotiations with other countries. So we had a weak president, and that weak president would make conflict more likely rather than less likely. And I think now that we have President Trump, it's very interesting. I remember years and years ago when Bill Clinton was president, we gave North Korea, for example, $4 billion if they'd agree not to have a nuclear arms project or program. Oh, well, guess what? We gave them the money, and now they've got nuclear weapons. I wonder where they got the money to build those nuclear weapons. But the fact is, he was a weak president. This president, or last president, Obama, was a weak president. And what's happened? You start having this guy, as I say, this commie piglet up in North Korea, having his picture taken next to nuclear weapons and saying we can hit the United States, threatening us. That's what you get when you have someone who's weak leading your country. We had someone who was weak. Donald Trump is not a weak person. And guess what? With all of his rhetoric and toughness, well, what are they doing now? There's big negotiations to see how they can work together in the Olympics and maybe actually have some interaction after the Olympics. That's a big step forward, and I think Donald Trump deserves some of the credit for that.
You were the special assistant to President Reagan.
Mm-hmm.
Back in the 80s, the world was different then. Right now, with President Trump's vision of putting America first, what kind of role do you see United States play in the world going forward?
Well, I think that the United States is going to be a different place after Donald Trump is done being president. Just like when Ronald Reagan was president, it was a different place by the time he ended. But people didn't see it as it was coming, because the type of change in the actual reality of the world it's hard to see unless it's a war or something like that. Well, I think we're going to see that same sort of change in the world for the better as Donald Trump's administration moves on. Reagan, it took him 2.5, 3 years to get the economy so it was functioning in a very fast pace and uplifted all of our goals. Donald Trump now has accomplished what took Reagan 2 to 3 years. He's done in about a year. And the fact that we have an economy that's taking off like a rocket, and I don't see an end in sight. He's doing some substantial, fundamental reforms that will carry us economically. With that new economic strength, you'll find the United States' influence in the world is going to grow. And with Donald Trump's forcefulness, you'll see that it'll be a different world, but you will have a lot of, you might say, Donald Trump meeting with very powerful leaders to help change policies that we think are detrimental to a good relationship between the United States and that country, rather than what our Donald Trump's predecessor did, was going to the United Nations or some international organization and thinking that trying to get them to do something was going to make the world a better place. Trump is more likely to go straight to the guy who's causing the problems, or straight to someone who can really help us and make a deal. And already that's pretty evident.
So Chinese New Year is around the corner. Is there any message you would like to say to our audience in China?
Well, let me just note, this is coming into the year of the dog. Now, there are some people in the United States who don't like it that Chinese people eat dog. And I want them Chinese people to know that we eat bunnies over here and we eat all kinds of little animals. I don't blame them for eating dog. I mean, if that's what tastes good, that's what tastes good. We should make sure that we reach out to the Chinese people so they understand us and we understand them. And we don't attack their ways, they don't attack our ways. When in fact, I believe that the Chinese people are America's and the world's greatest allies in seeking a peaceful world, because they don't want to live under tyranny and they want to live prosperous lives where we can economically interact so that everybody's better, raising everybody up. So let them know in China that many people like myself think of them, we don't like their government. And we think that the Chinese government is a real threat to the future peace of the world. But the Chinese people, we can all be friends and look together for a much better world in the years ahead.
Thank you so much, Congressman Rohrabacher, for your time. I really appreciate it.
Okay.
Thank you.